first grade. I'm here with my kitty, Kitzel. Kitzel, say hi to everybody. Say hi. Meow. And Kitzel and I are going to read Old MacDonald Had an Apartment House. You've heard of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. This is Old MacDonald Had an Apartment House. Old MacDonald lived in a big apartment house with his wife and their dog. He didn't own the building. Fat Mr. Rental did. Old MacDonald was the super, which kind of means he was the custodian. He polished the brass doorknobs when they got smudgy, mopped up the hallways when they got dirty, and sent up steam when it got cold. Old MacDonald's apartment was on the bottom floor and was very dark. The windows were covered by a thick, bushy hedge that grew in the front yard. Without sunlight, his wife's tomato plant was droopy and pale. So Old MacDonald decided to cut down the hedge in front of the windows. Check out that axe he's using to cut it down. With all the sunlight that came in, the plant straightened up, grew a few leaves, and even a few tomatoes. But the spot where the hedge had been looked very empty. So Old MacDonald's wife suggested that they fill in that empty spot with her tomato plant, and they did. It grew lots of new leaves, many more tomatoes, and much, much taller. Why not get rid of the rest of the hedge, Old MacDonald said. Then instead I could plant vegetables. They're better looking than the hedge and much better tasting too. So he cut the whole hedge down to the ground, and in its place he planted rows of corn and melons and beans and radishes, and the fountain became a self-watering pea patch. All the tenants were amazed. One of the tenants really didn't need 4 rooms anymore. Her children were grown up. So she moved out of her apartment. It occurred to Old MacDonald then that an empty apartment would be a good place to grow lots more vegetables. He quickly moved in some soil and proceeded to redecorate in late vegetarian style. He laid down a carpet of carrots and cabbages, put some sweet potatoes where the couch had been, and stuffed the closet with mushrooms. Some days later, Mrs. Katz, downstairs neighbors, Mr. Hopkins, turned on a faucet and got hot and cold running sweet potato vines instead of water. Above his head, he could see carrots popping through the ceiling, and he became furious. Either that garden goes or I go. But Old MacDonald really didn't care. He'd begun to feel that in some ways vegetables made better tenants than people. Carrots didn't smudge doorknobs, cucumbers didn't leave muddy footprints in the halls, and potatoes didn't bang on the radiators for more steam. Angry Mr. Hopkins moved out. A variety of vegetables, a field of clover, and a cow moved into the apartment. No one knew what Old MacDonald was doing, but you can't keep a cow a secret for very long. They moo, you know. More and more people moved out, very disgusted with what was happening. So, more vegetables, fruit, trees, cows, and chickens took their place. Finally, every tenant in the building had moved out. The apartment house had become a 4-story farm. Kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. Then one day, Fat Mr. Rental, the owner, stopped by to check on the house and collect the rent money, as he did every few months. When he saw that his tenants had been replaced by vegetables, fruit trees, cows, and chickens, he got upset. Very upset. "Look here, old MacDonald, what have you done?" he shouted. "Where are the families? All that's here now are bushels of fruits and vegetables, herds of cows, and flocks of chickens. And they can't pay me rent." Old MacDonald and his wife were very sad. They knew they would have to leave. Fat Mr. Rental told them so. In fact, he was going to have the whole farm thrown out onto the street. Old MacDonald told his wife not to cry. Fat Mr. Rental paced back and forth quickly in front of the house. He was very upset and not really sure that he liked the idea of throwing the farm out onto the street. Old MacDonald had been a very good super. Now, not only was he without tenants, but he'd be without a super too. "Who ever heard of a farm in the middle of the city? That's absurd," he muttered. Or is it? Maybe a farm could pay me rent after all. The next morning, old MacDonald and his wife stepped outside the house carrying their suitcases, and in the middle of the front walk, Fat Mr. Rental was actually building a store. There was a big sign that read, "Rental and MacDonald's fruits and vegetables, fresh milk, eggs, and honey." Fat Mr. Rental waved at old MacDonald and shouted, "Where are you going, partner? You grow the stuff and I'll sell it. Vegetables will pay me rent after all." On opening day, the store was jammed. Fat Mr. Rental made a very long speech in which he asked everyone to come in very often and to buy as much as they could. He asked old MacDonald to say a few words, and this is what old MacDonald said. "People, I am happy to have such fine vegetables as tenants. I hope you agree that good vegetables make good neighbors." The people applauded and then began to buy as much as they could. They came back day after day. Both the store and the farm thrived throughout the summer and the fall. And even in the winter, look at that. Even though the earth outside was frozen and covered with snow, things were still growing in the steam-heated farm. So you can see he has the heat on and there's lots of light and everything is still growing. It's a little different than old MacDonald had a farm, isn't it? And yet old MacDonald still has a farm. It's just that it's in his apartment house. Have a great day, you guys.